This is one of the hardest parts of working on counterinsurgency. Most of the time you are working with people like Jet.
Welcome back, everyone. I'm Wes Rist. I am a former atrocity prevention policy advisor at the U.S. State Department. I'm really glad to be here in conversation with my co-host and the founder of Former Feds and Friends, Madeline Vellturo, who I've known for quite a long time. Madeline, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi, everyone. I'm Madeline Vellturo. You know me, a former stabilization advisor with the U.S. government. Stabilization kind of involves a number of different aspects. I was a regional specialist focused on Africa. So the work I did across my career touched on issues of civilian protection, countering violent extremism, counter-radicalization, identity and land-based conflict, natural resource management. So it really runs the gamut. Love applying those skills in reacting to fiction, obviously.
Both Madeline and I are huge fans of Avatar: The Last Airbender, to the point where what started as a comment of like, we should talk about Avatar became a, no, actually, let's do a whole series review. We are working through Avatar: The Last Airbender, the animated series, the original, the preeminent in my heart and mind, that will look at specific episodes where we think there's a lot of content and ideas and issues to unpack. And so today we're doing the second in that series. We're looking at season 1, episode 10, so aptly named Jet.
The episode about Jet has a lot of staples that I've seen in the work that I've done, again, on counter-radicalization, counterinsurgency, and always the really difficult conversations about how to protect civilian populations in the context of war. I'm not a huge Jet fan, but it's a great episode, so I'm excited for it. I mean, I have a crush on Socca, so, you know, like that.
I think there is something to be said for the series as a whole, but in this episode, how Sokka's instincts about everything except direction are actually really right. And throughout this series, people just ignore Sokka. And when Sokka has a bad feeling about something, people should pay attention. The kid's moral compass is really good. Okay, well, let's dive into this episode.
Look, guys, I'm tired too. But the important thing is that we're safe from the Fire Nation. Run!
It's a weird instinct to drop everything. It's like,
I know,
all
right?
of your stuff.
Yeah, so they won't be able to exist anymore after they escape, but...
They're in the trees!
The scene reminds me of some of the things Scott Wiener highlighted in our episode on Dune about the use of insurgent forces using natural terrain that they are familiar with to gain an advantage on a militarily superior foe.
Hey, he was mine!
Gotta be quicker next time.
Yeah, it's kind of a Gimli and Lord of the Rings vibe.
Yeah.
It's like, that one counts as mine!
Why does the Fire Nation want to find you?
I guess you could say I've been causing them a little trouble. They took over a nearby Earth Kingdom town a few years back.
We've been ambushing their troops, cutting off their supply lines, and doing anything we can to mess with them.
One day, we'll drive the Fire Nation out of here for good and free that town.
That's so brave.
Yeah, nothing's braver than a guy in a treehouse.
So this is the definition of irregular forces, asymmetric warfare, like how a lower technologically advanced power fights a more technologically advanced power. But it's also a recipe for increased tit for tat kind of reactions and violence and, you know,
and it's a recipe for civilian harm. Insurgency often involves using kind of chaotic tactics to undermine a militarily superior foe. It also tends to yield much higher civilian harm for that reason, that like civilian harm is something you have to actively try to mitigate. It doesn't naturally mitigate itself. And typically that involves a fair amount of planning and a fair amount of risk analysis and mitigation. And that is antithetical to the tactics that are necessary to stage an effective insurgency, because you are the inferior power and you need to move fast and break things.
It's also one of the reasons why perhaps perhaps counterintuitively, the professionalization of militaries actually tends to result in lower civilian casualties because you train, it requires, like you said, it doesn't happen naturally to protect civilians in combat. You have to learn how to do it. And the more that you train a military with those standards, with those, guidelines and laws as governing principles, you actually end up with more protected civilian populations.
Long shot over there, his town got burned down by the Fire Nation. And we found the Duke trying to steal our food. I don't think he ever really had a home.
What about you?
Fire Nation killed my parents. I was only 8 years old. That day changed me forever.
Socca and I lost our mother to the Fire Nation.
I'm so sorry, Katara.
There's a lot of gaps in research about like understanding the path to radicalization, but some of the strongest evidence speaks to this like cluster of things we call adverse childhood experiences that happen to somebody, especially when they're young. And like you're saying that when their brain is developing, Jet exhibits a lot of the hallmarks of somebody who's been developmentally delayed. He seems to struggle with complex thinking, right? He is very prone to like black and white thinking. Later in the episode, we identify that he struggles with the concept of empathy. Obviously, Jet and Katara relate to each other because they have both had the same experience with their family being targeted and losing a parent or multiple parents, parental figures. So, but what's different is it seems that Jet has been displaced from his community, whereas Katara and Sokka remained in their community. So while their parents disappeared, their mother is killed, their father has to go off to war, they still remained in the place where they once felt safe and loved, and
in a communal society where extended families, and not just genetic family, but like the community saw each other as family.
Yeah, and they had that through line to get them through their grief. And it seems like perhaps Jet did not, that in whatever killed his parents, that he was also displaced from his community. And that's like a huge aspect to why perhaps Katara and Sokka were able to continue their development, their cognitive development, and develop some of these complex concepts like the ability to understand complex thought and empathy, where Jet perhaps struggles.
And it's interesting because that doesn't affect, like, he has tactical understanding of, military action. Like, he's clearly intelligent.
He's very smart.
But like you said, he's missing some of those complex, especially communal-based understandings.
Even though he can think, I guess it's still complexly, he can think in terms of complex tactics. He like very much is prone to binary thinking with all the like challenges that come with that from, again, a civilian security perspective.
Wait! False alarm! He's just an old man.
What are you doing in our woods, you leech?
Please, sir.
Elderly civilian, apparently unarmed,
but wearing Fire Nation colors.
Yeah.
Do you like destroying towns? Do you like destroying families? Do you?
No, please, let me go. Have mercy.
Does the Fire Nation let people go? Does the Fire Nation have mercy?
And there is this element
approach
of Jet justifying his actions based on the actions of his enemies.
Yep.
But he's not hurting anyone. Have you forgotten that the Fire Nation killed your mother? Remember why you fight.
We got his stuff, Jet.
Here's where we're seeing his inability to act according to nuance, or his lack of complex thought, right? Where it's like all people associated with the Fire Nation are fair targets. They are all like, the Fire Nation is an enemy, and anyone associated with that is fair game. So I think it's fair to assume that this man is a civilian. And this happens a lot, that people individually are like, it's fair game to target civilians based on their nationality, their political identity, their political party sometimes.
So to Jet, there's no such thing as an innocent Fire Nation member.
There are different terms for this, but like one of them is a tribal mindset, that like it is us versus them. And so we are talking about people in groups, not as individuals, and they are in a group that is the them, and that makes them fair game.
Hey, Socca. Is Jet back?
Yeah, he's back, but we're leaving. Your boyfriend Jet's a thug. He beat and robbed a harmless old man.
Sokka, you told them what happened, but you didn't mention that the guy was Fire Nation?
Fine, but even if he was Fire Nation, he was a harmless civilian.
He was an assassin, Sokka. See? There's a compartment for poison and a knife. He was sent to eliminate me. You helped save my life, Sokka.
He's such a master in manipulation, right? He undermines people, but never enough to make them angry. I'm guessing that knife was not on that man, so he has no problem lying. It's interesting that he is an incredibly righteous man, or incredibly righteous kid, but his moral compass does not seem to prohibit lying. But then also, the way that he talks to say, like, but Socca, we need you, but Socca, you're wrong, you're subordinate to me because I'm smarter than you, and also you have something to give. It's like a very powerful 1-2 punch from a charismatic leader perspective.
I didn't see any knife.
That's because he was concealing it.
There was no knife. I'm going back to the hut and packing my things.
Tell me you guys aren't leaving yet. I really need your help. The Fire Nation is planning on burning down our forest. If you both use water bending to fill the reservoir, we could fight the fires. But if you leave now, they'll destroy the whole valley.
Well, and he immediately pivots to Aang and Katara to say, I need you. Like, you have a chance to make a difference. You can help. He knows that it appeals to their sense of, like, they're wandering, they're homeless, they're without, broader purpose other than helping Aang on his journey, whatever that means. Like, the ability to make a difference in a discreet way is an incredibly powerful pull.
Well, and we struggled with that a little bit in countering violence extremism when we were working on it in the U.S. government, was that like a lot of our approach was to identify people who were at highest risk of being radicalized and then be like, okay, what do you need to not take up weapons? Like, what's the bare minimum that we can provide for you to just not be a threat? Like, we don't really care what happens to you. Don't really care if you get a job unless that's what you need to not take up weapons. But it was all preventive of like, you're a potential threat and we would like to neutralize you as a potential threat. The extremist groups themselves were coming into these young people and being like, you have immense potential. We need you and we can't do this without you. It's like, that's what people want to hear, Like, they don't want to hear like, just don't be a problem. They want to hear, be helpful, be a solution. Here's how you can.
I saw this in work in Syria where, these radicalized groups were coming in and saying, you have the potential to be leaders for your community going forward. You are the ones who are going to ensure justice, to ensure that the last decade of harm that the, regime has been imposing on your population won't continue. Us coming along and saying, here's some medical supplies and, we'll set up a camp. It's not purpose driven. And it's really tough to resist a call for a purpose driven life and opportunity with, here's some stuff. Please don't be bad.
Yeah.
Now listen, you're not to blow the dam until I give the signal. If the reservoir isn't full, the Fire Nation troops could survive.
But what about the people in the town? Won't they get wiped out too?
Look, Duke, that's the price of ridding this area of the Fire Nation. Now don't blow the dam until I give the signal. Got it? Socca, I'm glad you decided to join us.
I heard your plan to destroy the Earth Kingdom town.
Our plan is to rid the valley of the Fire Nation.
There are people living there, Jet. Mothers and fathers and children.
We can't win without making some sacrifices.
This is not technically civilian targeting. It is also not collateral damage. This is kind of called civilian harm. They are actively planning to conduct an operation that will harm a large number of civilians, and they are not taking efforts to mitigate that harm to those civilians. And that's what takes it away from collateral damage, which is, I don't know, you would know more than I, is permissible in the international law of war. Civilian harm is not. And you don't have to be pointing a gun at a civilian and shooting it in order for it to qualify as like you have not done your duty to mitigate the civilian harm. And what's interesting too is they would be kind of liable under international law. Like, people misunderstand that non-state armed groups are covered under international law. They are required to, or they can be held accountable if they break international law, even though they didn't sign those treaties, which has always confused me a little bit, but that is how it works.
Jet's group are acting as a military force. They are a non-state actor in that context. They're not a non-state actor like some entities where they were setting up like governing bodies and, food distribution, but they are a non-state military actor. And like you said, they are bound by the laws of armed conflict. One of the core principles that's, found in Common Article 3 across all things is proportionality. And so the proportion of the risk of civilian harm to the military objective that you are seeking to accomplish must be balanced. And here, this isn't a military camp that they're destroying. They're not wiping out a fortified town that has barracks and whatever. This is a civilian camp or civilian town, sorry, that they are going to wipe out because it means that the Fire Nation troops won't have anywhere to live and will have to leave the area. And by their own admission, they don't care that all the civilians will die too.
What are they doing? Hey, those are the red barrels he got from the Fire Nation.
Why would they need blasting jelly?
Because Jet's gonna blow up the dam.
Jet wouldn't do that.
Yes, I would. Katara, you would too if you just stopped to think. Think about what the Fire Nation did to your mother. We can't let them do that to anyone else ever again.
This isn't the answer.
The line where he says the Fire Nation won't be able to harm anyone ever again. Unfortunately, that is very narrow-minded, because what you're doing is you're creating like a massive grievance. You're doing a massive act of injustice. And so maybe Jet thinks it's worth it to eradicate this particular source of violence, this battalion or whomever. But like when you create, you've talked about this too, when you create that level of grievance, you do create the next threat. And that kind of speaks a little bit to that this isn't really about creating a more peaceful and just world. For Jet, this is about revenge, that it's like, but the threat that he wants destroyed is the one that ruined his life. And he's couching it in all these terms of, like that he wants to achieve some sort of military victory to save future populations from that harm. But the tactics, the logic doesn't follow, which is, again, a staple of kind of extremist logic, is that like, when you're like, but that's not what you say you want is not what you're going to achieve.
You have to narrow the window of consequence that you are looking at to such a tiny thing. It also reminds me, and for Americans of a certain age, I admit I'm in my mid-40s, like I remember hearing this in history class.
You don't look a day over 30.
Thank you. There was this, it became necessary to destroy the town to save it. Like this Vietnam War mentality of like the military objective. One, we have to be the good guys. So of course we were trying to save the town. But in order to save the town, we had to destroy the town. The convoluted logic that goes into my actions were justified even though it was expressly against my stated objectives of trying to make things better for people is unfortunately not uncommon.
All those people. Jet, you monster!
This was a victory, Katara. The Fire Nation is gone, and this valley will be safe. It will be safe. Without you. I warned the villagers of your plan, just in time. What? At first, they didn't believe me. The Fire Nation soldiers assumed I was a spy. But one man vouched for me. The old man you attacked.
So this is what makes me think he's a civilian.
Yeah.
Like
exactly.
if he had been an assassin, he kind of would not have felt beholden to Socca.
Yeah.
You traitor! No, Jet. You became the traitor when you stopped protecting innocent people.
Goodbye, Jet.
Yip yip.
Amusingly, though, they just fly away. Like, they don't actually resolve the problem. Jet's gonna get free and still
and continue to his
rebel leader in this area with no moral like at no point in that ending scenario does he think he was wrong.
Right. Yeah. There's a little bit of silliness that Sokka feels vindicated. He's like, I have saved. It's like, what? No, you just left him to continue to pray and do his insurgency according to his problematic compass.
There's no accountability here, which is massively difficult. Now, we are also privileged to the knowledge that later on, Jet apparently realizes his problem and, changes his life. What's the pathway for that, Madeline? What does de-radicalization look like?
De-radicalization is a really complex process. And I actually don't, it's not my area of expertise. It involves what's called psychosocial support. So social work, essentially. As we discussed, a lot of the radicalized behavior that Jet exhibits seems to come from developmental delays, which probably results from traumatic experiences happening when he was young. His parents were killed and he was displaced. Again, we should talk to an expert, but I don't from my limited knowledge, there's no way to like undo that without psychosocial support. A lot of de-radicalization is championed by de-radicalized people, right? Like people who identified as having been a part of an extremist group, and then they themselves, decide to defect or not be a part of that group anymore. And they're some of the most successful de-radicalizing forces.
Yeah, and it's also complex because that reintegration, and that can be highly complex. And I worked with some folks who did that in Sierra Leone, where you had children kidnapped from their communities and taken away and then turned into forces who attacked their own communities. That was one of the measures that these abductors used to prevent child soldiers from fleeing back home, was they make them attack their own communities so they feel like they can't go back because they've done something horrible. And then you have those communities who the fighting has ended. You've actually, let's say you successfully de-radicalized that individual, but those communities still experienced harm at the hands of that person. It's incredibly complex. And again,
they don't want to give them, depending on the size of the community, they don't want to give them jobs. Sometimes it's hard for them if generally you live with your family and your family won't accept you back. When it comes to like radicalized women, if they have had children, or even if they've not been radicalized but have been part of a radical group and have had the children of that are branded, terrorist children or whatever, their families might not accept them back, and that's doubly difficult for them because they also probably have trouble finding a job, in part because they now have a child. So, it's hard to be like a working mother. Yeah. And also it takes a lot, like we were talking about psychosocial support and other elements of support. Like Jet needs a home, like his people need somewhere to live. And a lot of times
food,
they need food. Meals. He needs access to things. Where I'm most familiar with this concept is in Nigeria, where like the insurgency there is happening in some of the most impoverished parts of the country already. So it's so hard to argue that we're going to spend money giving food and essentially therapy and housing to these former perpetrators when the civilian community itself doesn't have access to those services. And it's like, well, but we're trying to de-radicalize them. We're trying to demobilize them. We're trying to make them not a threat to you. But it feels so unjust to the communities themselves who struggle to have enough housing, have enough food, have almost no psychosocial support, that to watch a government spend money giving these types of services to the people who were terrorizing them to begin with. It's very complicated to pull off. The type of trauma that shaped Jet is very depressing, and this is one of the hardest parts of working on counterinsurgency. Is most of the time you are working with people like Jet who have experienced this deep trauma and injustice. It makes it so much more complicated than your typical, military villain or whatever, where you're just like, you're the enemy. It's like, you are also a highly traumatized person. I think the fact that he does get, we know that Jet de-radicalizes, that's quite hopeful. Like, I do feel like throughout the show, there is this kind of implication that Aang serves as this pivot point for almost everyone he meets, that has them questioning how they're approaching this context that they live in and ask themselves hard questions. So maybe Aang did, or Socca did, leave an impact on him.
As we finish, I just want to remind everyone that we are doing our best to provide commentary and feedback and insights into these episodes as we go. But we are reacting in real time. And so please take everything we say with a grain of salt. We might not get everything right, and everything we say might not be applicable to every single situation. So do your own research, do a little more work, and come at us with questions. Like, we love hearing your feedback on what we missed, what you'd like to hear more about. Like I said, we're doing a whole review of the Avatar, The Last Airbender series. So tell us which episodes you want us to react to, and we look forward to that. We don't charge for our content. It's not behind a paywall. We're not expecting you to sign up to subscribe or anything like that. We do ask that you follow us on YouTube, that you click the little bell notification, that you follow our social medias. And if you'd like to help us cover our costs, because it does cost money to make this content, and subscriptions and resources that we have to pay for, we have a Ko-Fi account that we would welcome any support you would like to provide. Thank you for joining us. We know it's challenging times out there. We all kind of want to be able to curl up and binge with our favorite shows. Here at Former Feds and Friends, we invite you to binge with purpose and think a little bit more about how you engage with the content that you watch. Have a good evening. Peace out. You okay, girl? Yeah.
Oh, your baby.
She's just a
Drew.
black square on the screen because she's so dark, but
Hi, Socca. Oh, she's so cute.